Hello.
Hello, welcome everyone. Hi, Fred.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to our third Leadership Summit session. Hi, Dan, Danielle, Christy, Krista, Josh, Dale Goodwin. Dale Goodwin celebrating 39 years at Gonzaga, everyone. How about that?
Woohoo! Congrats, Dale.
Thank you.
Isn't that amazing? Yes, so lucky to have you. All
Every
right,
day is a blessing.
Isn't it?
He looks pretty young for 39 years.
We'll do another summit session where Dale can give us all of his secrets. How about that?
I want to come to that one, Clara.
For sure, for sure. All right, well, we are here in November, again, our third Leadership Summit, and we're so grateful, again, that you're all with us. And like Dale said, every day is a blessing, and I was thinking, here we are in November, this month of Thanksgiving, and I had the opportunity yesterday to practice the examen, and many of us, of course, know the Ignatian examen, the prayer. And every time I have the opportunity to do that, I wonder why I don't do it more often. But the second step as we begin today is of course, gratitude, and being grateful for what we've been given today and in this week. And I just thought as we kick this off, to just take a minute, if you haven't already today, to think about, even with all that's going on in our world, in our households, at our university, that there's still so much to be grateful for. And so that second step says, allow the experiences of this day to come to mind. And for what or whom are you grateful for? We can just answer that question for ourselves as we begin today. And today's session will be a presentation and dialogue around the topic, Advancing Gonzaga, how you can grow in your role as a practitioner of Jesuit education. We are joined today by our presenters, Dr. Ellen Macaron, Associate Professor of Philosophy and Faculty Advisor to our President, and Dr. Molly Kretschmeyer Hendricks, Professor of Psychology and our University Core Director at Gonzaga. So excited to get to go back to the classroom with both of them today. In the session, you'll become familiar with the values, practices, and principles of our Gonzaga education and our core curriculum. You will walk away having learned more about how you can practice Jesuit education when you engage with others in talking about Gonzaga, some key marks of what a Jesuit education looks like in a Gonzaga graduate, how the university community practices lifelong learning in and out of the classroom, and how a Gonzaga education positions graduates for the future. We will remain together as a group for this session today. We aren't going to be put into breakout groups. But before we jump into our presentation, I wanted to take some time for a couple of announcements. First of all, you've likely seen several communications recently from the university regarding the really horrific Zoom bomb attack that our Black Student Union group experienced recently. You are all frontline volunteers for us, and we know you may have questions, you may be receiving questions from others, and we are going to continue to update you as more information is available. This is a big priority for us. But we also hope we can use our monthly sessions to spend some time together here in dialogue together, along with our Associate Chief Diversity Officer, to really talk about how we can create a path from where we are now to where we need to be in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, both on campus and in our alumni and university programming. So we are very hopeful that this will be the topic for our January session, and we hope we can be confirming that session soon. And next month's session, our December session, will feature Dr. McCullough, and we'll be reflecting on all we have navigated in the last year in 2020, and he will be sharing some reflections. You'll have the opportunity to ask him questions, and you can start registering for that session now. An email will go out following this session, and the registration link is available on the Leadership Summit website that most of you have seen now. So please join us December 10th. And finally, just as we approach the new year, we would like to take inventory a bit on what you've thought about the summit sessions and how we might change them to be even more valuable if it's needed, if monthly is too often, how this time frame works for you. We'd love your feedback. So you'll see a survey coming for that feedback as well. And we hope you won't be shy. We'd love to hear how we can make them even more valuable. And now I think it's time to get started with our presentation. So as we go, we'll jump into the presentation. Don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat box. And after the presentation, about 20 minutes in, I'll facilitate some dialogue with the questions that have come in to the chat box. All right, so welcome, Dr. Macaron.
Thank you so much, Clara, and to the whole University Advancement team for inviting me and Molly to give this presentation today. Thinking about it and what I wanted to share with everyone was actually a lot of fun and gives me a chance to talk about some things that I'm really passionate about. So I hope that that will be meaningful to you. And as Cara said, if you've got questions, please put them in the chat, and there will be a chance for us to address some of those questions at the end. So I wanted to start with this idea of what it is to be a practice and what it means to be a practitioner. And starting with that idea, I want to say we're all responsible for the mission of the university, whether we are faculty or staff or students or alumni or people who volunteer and are friends of the university. We're all responsible for that mission. And thinking about it as a responsibility is both a great opportunity, but also gives it a little bit of weight. And I think that we all have places where knowing a little bit more about the mission and about what it means to be engaged in it can be useful for us. So the first thing is this idea of a practice. And the best definition of a practice in philosophy comes from a University of Notre Dame professor, Alistair McIntyre, and he's kind of using Aristotle and Aristotle's understanding of a practice to bring it into the contemporary lens. And he says, look, a practice is any kind of cooperative human experience that has a goal or a purpose attached to it, and in which we can strive to be excellent. And so he's looking at things that move communities forward, that have strategy or innovation as part of them, and that have some purpose or goal that's meaningful to the people who engage in that practice. And I think that that describes so much of the work in an educational institution, right? We've got a goal which is meaningful to us. We have some idea of how we're going to get to that goal, but we're open to new and dramatic ways to change the methods that we use to achieve that goal. Certainly in the time of COVID, we've had to get really good at finding new methods to adapt so that we can continue with our mission and continue practicing Jesuit education. And it may seem a little bit surprising to think that if you're not employed by the university, you're still a practitioner of Jesuit education. But I don't think it's a stretch at all. So many of you give tirelessly of your time and your interest to share your love of Gonzaga with others. And that means you're beginning to educate people in a Jesuit education when you share of yourself and your knowledge about Gonzaga with others. And so thinking about ways to do that and to make sure that you're doing it well in a way that reflects what we're doing is part of what we hope to transmit to you today. I think that this is an empowering idea that we can increase the realm or the set of people who are practicing Jesuit education, practicing a Gonzaga education, by making sure that you know we see you in that light. And so when we get specific, once we're talking about the details of what it is to practice a Jesuit education, knowing what our values, principles, and other practices is important. We have lots of them, and many of them are given to us from the Society of Jesus, from our own university mission statement, a Catholic, Jesuit, and humanistic education. We have many different kind of touchstones that we use from those different realms to bring us to what our values, principles, and practices are. You've probably heard of many of them. There's the Magis, there's Cura Personalis, there's the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. There are all these different kinds of things that tell us what methods we use to impart to people this special thing that is a Gonzaga education. And they work in the classroom and on campus and beyond campus in slightly different ways. In the classroom, teaching, we have a responsibility when we're thinking about what subject we're teaching, how to make sure students get that information, how they can achieve mastery so that when we tell the world that they're a Jesuit graduate, that means something. When we move outside of the classroom, there are other ways. We have to think about how the campus community functions, their extracurricular activities, making sure that they're fostering responsible and respectful relationships with one another, with their faculty and staff, with the Spokane community more broadly. And these are all things that we're fostering in our students. So when we think about beyond campus and when faculty and staff are not necessarily the people who are practicing Jesuit education, that's where many of you come in. How do you think about our values and our principles and our practices on campus? What do you say to people about what we're doing, about why they might consider either sending their child to Gonzaga for an education, about joining one of our graduate programs or donating to the university? These are all the things that inspire people because they're the things that inspire us. So if we don't have a good sense of how to transmit that to others, we might not be doing as best a job by Gonzaga as we want to be. And so this is why thinking of ourselves as practitioners of Jesuit education can be really useful, because it's not just sharing a story about how much you love Gonzaga, but teaching people about what Gonzaga is and what it means to you. So when we start to really think about the details of what that looks like for our undergraduate population, the core curriculum is really the foundation. And so I'm going to turn things over to Molly Kretschmar-Hendricks for a few moments, where she's going to talk about the core curriculum and the process that we went through to change and update the core curriculum. So Molly, if you're ready, I'm going to give you your first slide.
I think I'm good. So I'm delighted to be with you today to share the highlights of our recently revised core launched in 2016. Our core revitalization process began in dialogue. In order to reimagine an outcomes-based core, we sought first to articulate what Gonzaga graduates should look like. And Ellen, if you could go back just for a moment to the previous slide. There we go.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries. So out of university-wide conversations and reflection on our mission, we developed our baccalaureate learning goals. These are the main themes. The full text can be found on our website. Okay, now the next slide, Ellen. Thank you. With the baccalaureate learning goals as a framework, our core task force developed this model. We sought to create a cohesive, relevant, 4-year, vertically and horizontally integrated curriculum grounded in our rich mission and heritage. We wanted to create an engaging series of courses that would enrich student learning rather than a series of distribution requirements to get out of the way. Our core is anchored by a big question. As students of a Catholic, Jesuit, and humanistic university, how do we educate ourselves to become women and men for a more just and humane global community? This question is progressively addressed by yearly themes and questions. The first year of the core, understanding and creating, how do we pursue knowledge and cultivate understanding, is heaviest, with 6 foundational core courses, including the first year seminar, writing, reasoning, math, scientific inquiry, and communication and speech. The second and third years, being and becoming, who are we and what does it mean to be human, and caring and doing, what principles characterize a well-lived life, are organized around the philosophy and religious studies sequences. And the fourth year, imagining the possible, what is our role in the world, is organized around a culminating core integration seminar. Students also complete broadening courses, 1 in each of the 4 areas shown here, and core course designations that can double count within the core and between the core and the students' majors. Students must complete 3 courses designated as writing enriched, 2 as global studies, and at least 1 as social justice. Among the most, and Ellen, I'll just have you go back to, there we go, perfect.
It's really sensitive jumping around. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. Among the most exciting changes of the Reimagine Core have been the additions of the first year seminar and the core integration seminar. The first year seminar is designed to help students make what we refer to as a cultural shift to university academic life, the life of the mind. It also has a very intentional focus on our mission as a foundation for our students' education. The core integration seminar pulls together the themes of the core and the Gonzaga mission alongside students' majors while inviting students to imagine the possible as they look forward to the next chapters in their lives. Okay, we can go to the next slide. There we go. For our alums in the audience who obtained your Gonzaga education somewhere between the 1980s and before 2016 when we rolled out the revised core, I thought I would include a slide showing a comparison. As you may recall, we had a small 31 credit university core that was supplemented with college and school cores. This meant that students' core experience would be different depending on their majors. Indeed, part of the initial charge of the core task force was to develop 1 university core with the same requirements for all students. Starting at the top, you will see that 5 foundational courses were largely retained, but also modified to offer more extensive and relevant educational experiences in these key areas. So for example, additional credits were added to reasoning and communication and speech, and our colleagues in biology, chemistry, and physics engaged in a substantial redesign of the non-majors scientific inquiry courses. and we added the first year seminar. The requirements in religious studies now include 2 courses, one on Christianity and Catholic traditions, and the other in world or comparative religion, instead of 3 courses. But please know that elements of the 100-level scripture course are now included in courses offered in the Christianity and Catholic traditions area. As I noted previously, the revised core expanded credits in reasoning and retained the sequence of human nature and ethics. Many of the 400-level philosophy courses, no longer required, have been modified and are now offered as core integration seminars. And every student, not just students in the college or in certain schools, now take courses in literature, social and behavioral science, history, and fine arts and design. Finally, the core is enhanced by course designations in the areas of writing, global studies, and social justice, which reflect essential values and skills. Next slide. I thought I would say just a bit more about the first year seminar and the core integration seminar. Here are some example titles of the FYS. Don't these sound fun and interesting? As I mentioned previously, the first year seminar is designed to help students make the cultural shift to university intellectual life. And if you'd go back to the FYS for a second, please.
I'm trying.
There we go. Thank you. These courses designed to help students make the cultural shift to university intellectual life. All sections are grounded in our mission and are interdisciplinary. Some are co-taught. This semester, I'm teaching coming of age in a global context. In this first year seminar, students explore the developing periods or the developmental periods of adolescence and emerging adulthood in diverse contexts. Assignments ask students to intentionally engage with the GU mission, explore key questions from different disciplinary perspectives, deepen their reflective capacities, and expand their worldviews. For their final projects, students are creating a coming-of-age story told through both narrative and images that focuses on an individual from a cultural context different from their own. Cultural contexts range from African to Native American to Asian to South American. And the next slide, Ellen. Here are some example titles of the core integration seminar, which, as I mentioned earlier, pulls together the themes of the core and the Gonzaga mission alongside students' majors while inviting students to imagine the possible. The picture in the lower left corner is of a group of GU students painting a mural at the East Central Community Center as part of an Arts in the Community core integration seminar. Ellen has taught several different CISs, including ethics of eating. Is that right, Ellen?
It is.
Yeah.
Popular course.
I'm sure Ellen can share more about her experience teaching in this area following our presentation. Okay, and the last slide. As a curriculum that sits at the center of every Gonzaga student's academic experience, it is my hope that the core plants the seeds and nurtures the growth of the capacities and dispositions articulated in our mission statement: reflective and critical thought, lifelong learning, spiritual growth, ethical discernment, creativity, and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Molly. I think that that was really helpful for people to see. What I want to talk about before we open things up for questions is a piece by Father William O'Malley of the Society of Jesus that talks about what he calls 5 hooks or 5 characteristics of a Jesuit school graduate. And I really like this piece. I believe that Clara has made this available to you or will be shortly. so that you have the actual text from Father O'Malley. But what I really like about this piece is that he's figured out a way to talk about all of the things that we use from our Jesuit tradition in different language that really invites us to think about those principles in a different way, because they carve up space, intellectual space, in a different way. And that means we come to it fresh and new and think about not the ways we've always done things, but some of the ways we can do things now. And I want to share some reflections on these 5 things with you to hopefully encourage you to think about your connection with Gonzaga in maybe new terms, so that you can share out with others the great things that are going on at Gonzaga today in slightly different ways. The first one, O'Malley takes from philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, who used this image of a fly in the bottle. And the idea was, until the fly figures out how to get out of the bottle, the whole world for that fly is just the bottle. And one of the things that a graduate of a Jesuit school ought to have is a broader engagement with the world, new horizons, thinking about the world in a new way, in a freeing way that connects with our liberal arts tradition. So once we have a small worldview, and when we come through college, whether it's at the undergraduate or graduate level, we should have expanded horizons. The other is this idea of heritage and perspective. This is a balancing act between what is in our tradition that's valuable, that we want to hold dear to, and that opening of perspectives that we get from the fly in the bottle. It reminds us that our new experiences can be interpreted in ways that are still meaningful to our heritage and traditions. And part of what grounds why we think those new experiences are in fact important are our heritage and traditions. We don't want to jettison that simply because there's something new coming our way. We want to balance what's important about our traditions with what new experiences we have, so that we can make the best use of both of those things. The third idea of not born for ourselves alone. This is another way of talking about being men and women for and with others, a more traditional way of talking about that Jesuit value. That our purpose here on earth is not just for ourselves. We're made to serve and share our gifts with others. And that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful all of you are here today. You have gifts, you do share them on Gonzaga's behalf, and you know that those gifts can be enriched, and we love that about you all. But this one is one that's so meaningful to so many of us here at Gonzaga. It's part of the reason that our core curriculum now requires a social justice element. It's part of the reason that we want that integrative education, that interdisciplinary element in the core integration seminar for our undergraduates, because we want them to be able to speak to audiences who are different from themselves, and that they can use that power and their education for good out in the world. And that connects perfectly with the next element, eloquentia perfecta. Now, this is one of the old ways of talking about a Jesuit education that's being brought back by O'Malley. It's not simply him just trying to put a new spin on things. This was actually part of the Ratio Studiorum, the initial set of courses that Jesuits had in their schools as early as the 1500s in Messina. This idea that the only way that you're going to have a mark on a world is if you are eloquent. You better learn to speak and speak well so that people can understand you and know that what you have to say is worth listening to. And this is certainly part of our core curriculum for undergraduates, and some of our whole master's programs are designed around this one particular element of Jesuit education, how to be a good communicator in the world. And nowadays, some of that means, how do you write a good website? How do you have a good blog? How do you use Twitter effectively? I'm still learning that one myself, right? So lots of different things can be used to enliven that very old value. And the final one is this, what O'Malley calls the spirit of finesse. And this one I really find to be fascinating and fun, right? We might think of the spirit of finesse as a disposition to seek the knowledge of the human soul in ourselves and in others, more than what we read on the surface. We need to get comfortable with all of the gray in the world. Things aren't black and white. Sometimes a good old standby rule won't apply in a situation that we thought it did at first, because if we did apply it, we'd be missing some of the humanity in ourselves or in others. And that spirit of finesse is the detail work of a Jesuit education, as we're not just trying to make sure that people have lots of skills. We want to make sure they know how to use those skills in the world with attention to what's truly human. And this is one of the things that I think really sets a Gonzaga education, a Jesuit education, apart from lots of good training and skills that people get in lots of different places. And so with these 5 things, we see an interplay that creates a holistic education for ourselves, for those we teach, for the members of our community that we interact with, and that never ends. The Gonzaga degree is not the end of your Gonzaga education, because a Gonzaga education sets you up to learn new things and incorporate them into who you are forever. That's one of the things that I'm really, truly proud to be a part of when it comes to Gonzaga. And so when you are thinking about your role as a practitioner of Jesuit education, this is all part of it, right? And you can probably see some of these elements in yourself, given your Gonzaga education if you're an alum. And if you can't, you might want to be a little bit engaging in some of that reflection that Clara mentioned earlier with the daily examen, because that's where we can find some of these things when we have gratitude for what the world and God has given us. And so that's where I'm going to turn things over for a chance for questions. So hopefully some of you have some questions. Actually, that's not what I was going to do. I had one more slide, but I think I said most of that already. Let me quickly just say that this idea of a Gonzaga education in the 21st century and what our alums are learning is really important for them to be able to conceive of themselves in the world. And that's part of our goal with the new core and with some of the changes that people are making in their thinking about how to be intentional about how the mission informs our education. And so I really do see all of our alums and ambassadors at diversity advancement level as doing part of this work with the people that you meet. Now.
Wonderful. Now questions. There's the slide. Oh, thanks to you both. That was just wonderful. And I see some questions coming up in the chat, and please do feel free to put your questions in there. I wondered, just to start off, also, as you're sharing this, I'm thinking about how everything that you just shared is even more pronounced right now, just given all that we're navigating. And I know all of us, our thoughts are with our students, especially, how they're doing and what's happening in the classroom, even, what are the things that are on their minds. And maybe you can both just share a little bit about how are classes right now? How are our students doing? And how is all of this maybe amplified or pronounced or at work in this time?
I think it's hard. Teaching is really hard right now. Students are working really hard. Learning is really hard right now. People are stressed. And I will say that my experience in the classroom, AKA sitting in this chair, teaching remotely via Zoom, has been both frustrating and fantastic. It's frustrating that I'm constantly thinking about how technology is mediating what I'm doing. It's fantastic because the students are showing up and they are working really, really hard. And I am grateful for their stick-to-itiveness. Like, they're not giving up on themselves and they're not giving up on their classmates. And that is really, really rewarding.
Yeah, I'll just add, I love, Ellen, your description of frustrating and fantastic at the same time, right? I have a group of first-year students, and they jumped right in with a lot of energy and commitment. They were really excited to be here. The majority of them are on campus, and we're delighted to be able to actually come to Gonzaga and, get out of their parents' home for a little while. I actually do have one student, though, who is joining us from Thailand. That is 14 hours ahead. My FYS meets on Monday evenings from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And so for him, it's Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, and he shows up every single time. So they've been incredibly committed. One of the things we did at the very beginning of the semester to introduce the idea that we together create a learning community, I had them engage in some dialogue about how they wanted the class to kind of run and operate, particularly in the Zoom environment. I had them craft some policies and some ways to manage what we were all challenged by. And they put together a beautiful document. I'd be happy to share it if people are interested. But anyway, it was really powerful to hear their voices about how they wanted the class to run. And then when we have those moments where some people start to kind of check out, and they do, noticed a lot of that right around midterm, giving them the space and grace to not have their screens or their cameras on if they needed to, but also to remind everybody of the commitments we made to one another as a learning community. We've been able to return to this document. So I think that has worked really well, particularly in this context.
I want to make sure that we address some of the questions that are coming up in the chat. So one question is, what distinguishes a Gonzaga education from a Santa Clara education, both being Jesuit institutions? And when we think about Santa Clara or other Jesuit schools, I think one of the things that makes a Gonzaga education stand out is our mission statement has a clearer, more direct connection to what we would call a Christian humanism. And very few Jesuit schools put their mark in their mission statement that way. And that guides both what our core curriculum does, but also our co-curricular activities. And this is not to say that other Jesuit schools don't have some sort of Christian humanism in their curriculum, but it's not often as forward as it is at Gonzaga. Molly and I are both participating right now in an Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities leadership program, although we're in different years, so we're in different cycles of the program. And one of the things I hear from folks in this program is Gonzaga's mission statement uses the word humanistic. You have a three-legged stool because we just have a two-legged stool. Ours doesn't always stand up so well. And things to that effect. And so that's one of the ways that I think a Gonzaga education differs. We've put that up front. And so when we see our curriculum and the things that we're encouraging students to participate in veer off from that, we have the mission to fall back on in a way that some other schools don't. And then we've got a question that says, I'm curious if the committee, I'm assuming that's the core curriculum committee, considered a more unique name for the core, since many universities have core curricula, but few have the breadth and depth of Gonzaga's. And then there's a question that's related that says, how often will the core curriculum be updated going forward? So I'm gonna give that to Molly.
Sure. So if I was tracking, I know some institutions have kind of named their core, and that wasn't so much something we explored, but what was really important to us was to ground the core in a big mission-oriented question. And then as I shared, each year of the core has its own theme and question. And I think that's quite unique to what we've done. I've actually been invited to consult with several other institutions, Jesuit institutions, as they are revising their core. And that's been one aspect of our core that they have said has really stood out. The second piece of that was around how often do we imagine revising? So we just graduated last year our first class that came in under the new core. So we are now, this year is our 5th year with the new core model. And I think we imagined from the beginning that this curriculum would be responsive certainly to assessment and also to changing and challenging contexts. So one of the kind of next phases of this work, from my perspective, is to really kind of unpack and then reimagine how we can embed diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the core. I think we're well on our way to doing that. We've got some great first-year seminars and core integration seminars that explicitly take on those issues. The social justice piece, the global studies piece that is really designed to develop greater sensitivity among our students for people who are in different cultural contexts. I think that there has been some really good work in that area, but we have more work to do. So that's kind of the next, I think, sort of phase. I don't imagine we're going to restructure the core, but rather I imagine we might look at learning outcomes in different areas and make sure we're doing the work to embed and really create a robust experience around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And Molly, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things about the new core is because we have greater opportunities for courses across the undergraduate curriculum to apply for core designations of various kinds, that the core can be responsive without needing new scaffolding in a way that our old core was not really allowing us.
Yeah, that's right. And because it's a university core, a lot of course, the main courses are offered in the College of Arts and Sciences, but we also have colleagues now from all over campus, including the School of Engineering, the School of Business, Nursing and Human Physiology, the School of Education, who are partnering with us in really unique and interesting ways, particularly by adding those designation requirements, but also by teaching in the first year seminar, in the core integration seminar, for example.
Wonderful. And please do, oh, I see one more question. I also wanted to give Molly and Ellen, as you'd like, you have a wonderful group of leaders here, and you deserve the opportunity to ask them questions as well. So feel free to ask the group. Let's see here.
Thanks, Clara.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see just one more question I can quickly address in the chat about how does the core blend with, for example, our Florence program, or for students maybe studying abroad in other areas. Many students do sort of look to take core classes, as part of their study abroad. And so I actually had the opportunity to work with our Florence colleagues before we rolled out the core, so that they could reimagine some of the courses they were offering to fulfill core, especially the 3rd year core courses and some of the designation requirements. So I think it's a pretty seamless experience for our Florence students. For students studying abroad in other areas, we have a process by which they we've got a lot of courses pre-approved for core, but then any new courses, they submit a syllabus and we do a approval on our end, so that students might take a history course or social behavioral sciences or fine arts, or, you know, some of their third year core courses like world comparative religion or ethics on another campus.
And speaking to that question about Florence, it's interesting to note in these COVID times that some of our faculty who are housed in Italy and at our Florence campus are teaching on Zoom for students who are studying on main campus, or where their parents' living room or wherever they are this semester, in a way that we've never really had before, which is interesting. So of course, the students sadly aren't in Florence themselves, but we found a way to integrate those faculty into our normal or abnormal, as the case may be, running of things this year. So we're still one faculty, even if we are separated.
We even have one of our longtime Florence faculty members, Henry Batterman, who is actually in Spokane in an office in College Hall teaching his classes from Spokane. So
that's great. I didn't realize Henry was on campus this semester.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I may be hitting up Henry for a first year seminar.
he'd love it.
Yeah, he'd be good at it.
So one thing that I would be curious from the group, either a shout out or in the chat, if there's anything that you think about how you share about Gonzaga that's worth other people knowing. Like, are there special things that when you talk about Gonzaga, you think other people would like to hear that are in this group? Because I think I would like to hear them. My guess is that Molly and Clara would like to hear them too.
Speaking from an alumni position, there used to be the ability for alums to sign up for a course for $20, which is dirt cheap. They could probably charge $50 now and get away with it, or maybe $100, I don't know. But it's a way for all of us to continue to learn the Jesuit values that we seem to sort of drop by the wayside, such as when Clara was talking about the examen when we came in. When I was a freshman at Gonzaga, if somebody asked me, did you see the examen today, or did you read the examen today? We didn't. What exam? We wouldn't even know what it was. And yet now the students are so aware of that. And I have been able to get aware of some of it through a lot of the alumni activities. But I think some emphasis should go out to the alums again, to try to enrich the alumni experience by further education and signing up for some of these classes, whether it be, I would love to take Jason Houston's class on Dante. It's a class that I didn't enjoy when I was in Spokane back in the 60s, which I really would enjoy now. And that would also give you sort of the Jesuit humanistic experience once again. So that's just a suggestion out of the air.
That's a great suggestion, Dan. And I have to share that we have that program to some extent through the Alumni Association membership. However, the classes are a bit limited as to what you can. I believe they're lecture classes. One thing that was interesting when we entered COVID, one of the surprises, I guess, with education going virtual, we had a large response to this opportunity, more than we have in years. And so I think we maybe came upon an opportunity there as well, as we didn't want to be virtual with our learning, but I think there's something that we need to listen to with that response. Even a response from our recent graduates who had just graduated, wanting to sign up for the program and still have the opportunity to be in the classroom. So it's something we're watching and talking about right now.
And I will say that I've had a few alum who have audited some of my classes over my 16 years at GU, and it's been great fun having them there. And the perspective that they bring, saying, hey, you know, this is lifelong learning. I'm here. I could be doing, you know, I could be golfing, but I'm here with you all, has been so meaningful to the current students as well, that I wouldn't trade it for the world. As a teacher, I love when alums are auditing class.
And I wonder too if because we really had to change the way we were offering classes to create this sort of virtual space, that might even open up these possibilities as we move forward, right?
And I'd like to say, this is Joan. One of the things that I love about Gonzaga is our focus on lifelong learning. And so I tell folks that our tuition dollars go, I'm a banker, so you can average for your lifetime. The lifetime value is huge. And I think in terms of those that are at Gonzaga and thinking about teaching the students, if you want to think about how you've taught us and how we continue that mission in our communities. So when I'm thinking about we're not born for ourselves alone, this learning that you've been providing through COVID has helped me tremendously. And it's also helped me reach out and make sure that our people in our community feel that they're loved and supported. And I think that's what I've learned from Gonzaga and my Gonzaga friends and community, is that no one's a number, and we're leading with our authenticity and making sure that we're taking good care of each other in the spirit of the Jesuit tradition. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joan. And other people are putting in the chat about not feeling like there were a number, you know, some other things about the community and family feel of GU.
So Brian Cookta here, class 86, and I've been recruiting locally for Gonzaga for, geez, longer than I care to remember. I was the one that asked about the naming of the core curriculum, because your original question was, you know, what do you talk to people about? And I am dating myself, but even when it switched to core curriculum, I talked about the thought and expression block just to differentiate it from what other universities were offering. And you know, you combine that with the family feel that's being mentioned in the chat, and the opportunity for non-classroom reflection, the retreats, the pilgrimage, the search community, whether it be Catholic or others. So that combination of things, but just sort of reiterate what I put in the chat. I see a lot of high school kids that hear about core curriculums and their eyes glaze over, and the parents' eyes glaze over because they went through that. Oh yeah, I had to take history, I had to take art. But there is something different about what you guys have created here. And as an engineer, I really appreciate adding the scientific aspect to it. And I love how you guys have re-engineered it. I think it's fantastic. The addition of the seminars as well, I think is a great addition. So well done, but it is so different. It's unfortunate in my mind to call it a core curriculum like everyone else does.
You know, I mean, that's a great suggestion, and something I can certainly take back to my colleagues and see if there's something we could reimagine around how we're referring to our core generally. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the struggles, Molly, is that many schools used to have a core. They still call it a core, but when you look at it, it's really general education distribution requirements.
Right.
And so ours is a core. We still call it a core, but it still has that integral element that some schools have lost when they move to distribution requirements, even though they didn't change the name.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Confuses things.
That is well stated, yes.
Right.
Wonderful, and some nice comments in the chat from Bridget and Danielle, Ellen and Molly.
I want to, if I have a second before we wrap things up just quickly, I wanted to say in response to Bridget's question about losing the 400 level philosophy class. I think that, you know, as a philosophy teacher myself, certainly our department was a little bit sad about that. But as a philosophy teacher also myself, the core integration seminar is the best, most fun philosophical teaching that I've ever done. It's interdisciplinary at its core. Even if you're not a philosophy professor, you have to deal with some philosophical material in order to do that interdisciplinarity well and to make sure you're hitting the outcomes about Jesuit education. So even if it's not a PHIL 432 students are taking, they're still getting a lot of philosophy in that core integration seminar. So it looks a little different, it's packaged a little different, but as a teacher, it's even more fun. And I hope for the students, it's more fun.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I didn't really address in this presentation, but I've talked about elsewhere, is the reimagination of our core really was revitalizing for so many of our faculty as well. And it's invited faculty into conversation with one another in a way that I think is so good for our students. So, you know, I highlighted one of the FYSs. I didn't talk about it, but it's the art and science of dance. And it is co-taught by a dance professor and a professor of biology. And the professor of biology actually dances with the students. And the dance faculty members in the biology lab. So, you know, these are opportunities for this kind of interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary thinking and fertilization that, you know, is so much a part of, I think, where we see our students going and how we need to educate them for a much more complex world, right? We're graduating students now who will do work we haven't even yet fully imagined, right? So having those interdisciplinary sensibilities and being able to see how collaboration works is really cool. And it's been fun to see that develop as part of the core.
So I quickly just wanted to say thank you for being here, and thanks for UA for asking us. Please feel free to contact me or Molly, and Clara will be happy to get you our email if you're not able to copy this down, because I know she's got a little tiny bit of stuff she needs to say before we close out. So I wanted to make sure to give the floor to Clara now.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Ellen and Molly, and to all of you for this great conversation. And yes, we are a community together and a family. And if you do have more questions, keep them coming. We want to make sure you feel completely educated and able to speak to all that's going on right now at Gonzaga, especially with the education and the core. So this was wonderful. To wrap, I just have to say, we'd love to see you back. It's somewhat of a quick turnaround. So December 10th for our session with Dr. McCullough. I know he'd love to see all of you, and we're hoping we can have a great dialogue there. We're also going to be adding an option, if you're interested, to text to receive updates. So if you're not getting the emails, I know we hear that sometimes they're getting lost, maybe you're going into junk mail or a spam filter. We are giving you a new option to receive updates when registration is open for the monthly sessions, and you just text ZEG's lead to 51555, and we'll give you the upcoming information. And we promise our goal is not to over communicate, but we probably will send that survey via text as well. So that's a new option if you prefer to receive updates that way. And with that, just want to wish everyone a very safe and healthy and blessed Thanksgiving. And we'll look forward to seeing you in December. Have a great day. Oh, and go Zags. We
Yes,
still
go
have
Zags.